Prayers.
Almighty God, who in your infinite wisdom and providential goodness have appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and just government of humanity, we beseech you to look upon with your abundant favor these your servants, whom you've been pleased called to the performance of such important trusts in this land. Let your blessing descend upon them here assembled, and grant that they may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under their deliberation in so just and faithful a manner, so as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the good of those whose interests you've committed to their charge. Amen.
Item number 1 on the order paper, communication from the chair.
Honorable members, I welcome you to this sitting. I'll cause alteration on the order paper. Item 4 will not be handled today, and that is the motion seeking leave of Parliament to introduce a private member's bill. We'll defer that to next week because some processes have not been complete, so we'll need to complete them first before we bring that motion up. Otherwise, today also, 3 o'clock, we have the Prime Minister's question time. So we'll be dealing with that at exactly 3 o'clock. Thank you. Let's proceed.
Item number 3 on the order paper, statements by ministers. 3.1 on the commemoration of the World Population Day, 11th July 2017.
Honorable, there's a matter from Bukoto South. He didn't rise, so I did not notice him.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I rise on a matter of national interest. Sometime last May, on the 18th, the UCDA came to my constituency trying to enforce the factories to produce quality coffee. In particular, they came to Bukoto South at Kinoni Trading Center. 27 factories were closed. I went there trying to see what we can do in order to improve the quality of coffee. Unfortunately, they couldn't open the factories till the 28th of June. That meant that the factory has been closed over a month. The timing was wrong. This was the time when the parents are trying to sell their coffee and pay school fees for their kids. The timing was wrong. These 27 factories, they employ over 500 people there. You might have heard there was riots in those areas. Riots were there in Kinoni. Riots were there in another trading center. But all the same, the UCDA did not open the factories. We agreed as a district that let's give people time and to start sensitization of the farmers how quality coffee can be achieved. I, for one, I come from a coffee growing family. As if it was not enough, after the reopening of the factories, the UCDA went ahead and started visiting the compounds. When they started visiting compounds and at the same time checking the quality of coffee which was already picked from the gardens, a lot of coffee was confiscated. Some were dumped in the pit latrines, some were just sprayed in the banana plantations, some was sprayed along the road. As you may recall, government has spent to Rengo district 34 billions, 590 millions under the program of wealth creation. From 2013 to date, government has spent that much. And this is the first harvest since the wealth creation started giving coffee seedlings. But all this was happening under the watch of the sector minister of agriculture. Right, Honorable Speaker. This malicious damage of crops and government money to the tune of 34 billion being lost by UCDA under the watch of the sector minister of agriculture. I pray that the sector minister comes on the floor of Parliament and explain this malicious damage of harvested coffee, maliciously damaged. Now we have a problem on the ground. The riots are over, but now we have a problem. Right, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the evidence on a diskette which was covered during the operations of malicious damaging farmers' crops, making government lose money. I beg to lay.
Honourable Member, I'm not sure what that is. So I'm reluctant to accept it on record. Let us first verify what it is, then we can deal with it later.
So,
okay?
Can I leave it here for verification?
No, I'll pick it later, and then we have the IT people check it, then we see what to do with it. Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker. And I want to thank Honourable Haji Mbabali for that issue which needs urgent attention, which touches a cross-section of the people of Uganda. To begin with, Right Honourable Speaker, on the pending business of Parliament, according to yesterday's order paper, and I think even today's order paper, there is an item on the closure of coffee factories in Greater Masaka region by Uganda Coffee Development Authority. And Honorable Muyanja Mbabali's constituency falls under Greater Masaka. Therefore, we expect a detailed statement on what's happening on the ground to be brought here by the minister in charge. Be it as it may, Right Honourable Speaker, Coffee Development Authority is an authority which is mandated, among other things, to promote coffee in terms of production, but also in terms of quality, because we realize that coffee is one of the enterprises which brings big amounts of income to this country. So the matter of enforcement, in all circumstances, inconveniences the people. It's like enforcement which is taking place now in the fisheries sector. You confiscate goods, immature fish, or coffee which is not supposed to be harvested according to the regulations. But this inconveniences the owner. But again, you have to implement, because you have to improve on the quality. People harvest green coffee. We cannot export green coffee. They put coffee on the ground. That's why they go into the homes now, to see how one is drying his or her coffee. They have to go into the homes, because this is where coffee is being dried. So we as members of Parliament, who are promoting quality of our goods which we export, so that we can increase on export instead of having, huge amounts in terms of imports, we must take a decision on how to do this kind of enforcement. Therefore, since we expect a statement from the minister, my role is to make sure that I push the minister to make sure that the statement comes here as soon as possible. But otherwise, we are in that situation where we enforce and inconvenience people. But again, we have to make sure that our exports really meet the standards which is required.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, you'll recall that this matter was brought up when the factories were closed. That's over 2 months back. Now they have been open, and these things are happening. When they're open, now they are confiscating and destroying without any sensitization going on. So can the minister come back on Tuesday afternoon with the statement that the people of Gweta Masaka can understand what is going on? Tuesday afternoon. Thank you. Next item.
Item number 3 on the order paper.
Procedure.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, yesterday you did direct that we are handling 2 issues among the issues that will be handled today, especially one of Klembe Mines and also the one of UTL. And Right Honourable Speaker,
UTL, the chairperson is not there.
Yes.
Let's proceed, please. Let's proceed. The chairperson is not there. That's why we withdrew it from the order paper.
because I'm the move of the minority report, Right Honourable Speaker, and I
Well, the
come prepared.
chairperson is not there. That's the reason it is not there. Please, let's proceed.
Item number 3 on the order paper. Statements by Minister. 3.1 on the commemoration of the World Population Day, 11th July 2017.
Honourable Minister.
Right Honourable Speaker and colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to make a statement on the commemoration of the World Population Day. Right Honourable Speaker, on Tuesday, July 11th, 2017, Uganda will join the rest of the world to commemorate World Population Day under the theme, Strengthen Youth Competitiveness for Sustainable Development. The national function will be hosted by Busia District Local Government at Madibala Primary School Playgrounds in Busia Municipality. His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has been invited to be the chief guest at this important event. Colleagues, young people are the fastest growing segment of our population, and their welfare is a fundamental input into key economic and social outcomes, including the size and competitiveness of our future labor force and economic growth. The theme, therefore, underscores the role and the contribution of young people to Uganda's economic development. Right Honourable Speaker, with Uganda's predominantly youthful population, 78% of which is under 30 years of age, the country could harness the potential of the demographic dividend by focusing on policies that ensure that the youth barrage has education, skills, and access to jobs to be the engine of economic growth in the country. Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, it's important to put significance of the theme in the Ugandan context. In the last 30 years, Uganda has made deliberate and focused investment and provided an enabling environment in the fields of population, health, and economic development with appropriate policies and programs. The country has focused on the health of women, children, including prevention in the health sector, immunization, safe water, sanitation, HIV and AIDS, prevention, among others. As a result, Uganda witnessed commendable progress in a number of areas as indicated in the last census 2014, as well as the most recent Uganda Demographic and Health Survey 2016. Let me mention just a few examples. Ugandans are now living longer lives than ever before. For the first time in the history of our country, children who are born today are expected to live for an average of 63 years. This is a remarkable progress, considering that the life expectancy in Uganda in 1990 was only 43 years. Infant mortality rate has declined from a high 122 deaths per 1,000 live births in 1990 to a lower 43 deaths per 1,000 live births in 2016. Although, of course, colleagues, no child deserves to die, nevertheless, this is a good progress by any standards. This achievement is a direct result of the strong political leadership on child immunization against the killer diseases. Maternal mortality has also decreased from 438 to now 336 per 1,000 mothers who visit the health centers. A combination of reduced mortality and increased life expectancy has led to a rapid increase in our population. Uganda's population has grown from 16.7 million people in 1990 to 34.6 million in 2014, and is expected to reach 40 million by next year. This is Uganda's most important resource, and we should pay attention to it. Permanent roofing of houses increased from 56% in 2002 to 70% in 2014. This has significant benefits towards people's health and hygiene. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, despite this progress, we still face population-related challenges. For example, fertility rate in Uganda remains high, while the total fertility rate declined from 6.2 children per woman in 2011 to 5.4 children per woman in 2016. The rate of decline is slower than the Vision 2040 target. Honorable members, the teenage pregnancy rate in Uganda remains high at 25%. It is even higher in Busia, where we are going at 27%. And this has stagnated for the last 10 years. This means that in Uganda, 1 out of every 4 of our teenage girls has had a baby before they reach the age of 19 years. Colleagues, this is a matter of national concern that we should work hard to ensure that teenage girls are not impregnated before they become of age. And in fact, we should work hard to stop marriages before the age of 18. Right Honorable Speaker, one of the other biggest challenges is a high dependence on subsistence farming. Out of the total of 7.3 million households in Uganda, 5 million households, representing 68.9%, and subsistence economy. And I will be distributing the booklets were provided, Right Honorable Speaker, the census results up to a sub-county level. Each member in the next 2 weeks will be receiving the profile of your constituency to see how you are performing in your constituency. But when we remove the urban centers, the subsistence figure actually goes beyond 85%. Colleagues, this is a challenge we must confront as leaders of this nation. One other important challenge that this Parliament should be aware of is the low household hygiene. According to the National Housing and Population Census 2017, and this is extremely important, only 27% of people who visit the toilet wash their hands with soap and water. This has serious implications for the control of infectious diseases like diarrhea and typhoid. In addition, malnutrition remains high at 44% countrywide. This calls for concerted efforts to address the issue of nutrition among our people. In spite of these challenges, Right Honorable Speaker and colleagues, Uganda still has an opportunity to harness its demographic dividend. I should, however, state that a demographic dividend is not automatic. The demographic dividend is that economic benefit arising out of a country taking advantage of its young youth barrage by adopting clear, focused, sustained policies that empower the country's working population and its potential labor force. If this useful population is equipped with quality education, demand-driven vocation and training skills, good care, health care, and job opportunities, like the NRM government is doing, they will be productive, save, invest, and can be the engine. And indeed, they are becoming an engine of economic growth. Indeed, the NRM government has been and continues to focus on harnessing the potential of young people through programs like the Youth Livelihood Education, among others. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker and honorable colleagues, just to remind and inform you that Uganda will join the rest of the world to observe the World Population Day on the 11th of July, next Tuesday, that His Excellency the President is expected to preside over the function, and this year's celebrations will be at Madibala Primary School, Busia District, under the theme Strengthening Youth Competitiveness for Sustainable Development. And in spite of the challenges mentioned above, with Uganda's predominantly youthful population, 78% of which is under 30 years of age, the country can harness the potential of the demographic dividend by focusing on policies that ensure that the youth biology has education, skills, and can access to jobs to be the engine of economic growth in the country. And finally, Right Honorable Speaker and honorable colleagues, the purpose also of this statement is also to invite all of you to come and celebrate with us in Busia. I thank you.
Honourable members, that's a statement of information for the commemoration of the World Population Day, which will be on the 11th of July, Tuesday of next week. It attracts a debate, a short debate, and we can start that debate now. Okay. Okay, we'll stop with the 7 members who have risen before. Yes, I'll start with Aivo.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for the statement and also thank your office for allowing us to have a say about the World Population Day that we'll be celebrating on 11th. I'll go straight to the point. Right Honourable Speaker, these celebrations are very important. And I presume that the Minister of Finance has done his groundwork and is prepared to face the task. As a country that has the youngest population in the world, I think raises a red flag looking at the current challenges that we're facing in terms of unemployment, in terms of illiteracy, in terms of ignorance, in terms of disease burden, talk of HIV, AIDS, and other terminal diseases. Right Honourable Speaker, as Children's Forum, we interact with so many agencies who give us research reports, information in regard to the current challenge that we are facing in as far as the young population is concerned. If you went in the education sector, the rate at which our children are dropping out is so high, and the biggest component of this is the girl child. And when these girls drop out, they form the productive batch of women out there. I think I'm even wrong to call them women, because most of them are married early, others have been defiled, others have ended up in those, unwanted marriages and getting unwanted pregnancies and what have you. So it's incumbent that the government rethinks the education sector, because it's only education that can help reduce the population. Because if a girl child was retained for the 3 cycles of education from nursery, primary, O level, up to A level, we will have limited, we will have controlled population in one way or the other. Because one, the period a girl child takes in school will reduce the exposure to early marriage. Secondly, uninformed girl child takes precautionary measures, either in terms of using family planning methods or in terms of even refusing to get married off. So I think as a country we have no option but to rethink our education sector and give it the support that it requires so that we can get resourceful human beings in the future. Thank you.
PW Eastern.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for his report, and I stand to support it. Right Honorable Speaker, I'm going to focus majorly on the teenage pregnancies. And I think we need to understand the underlying challenges that are happening to our girls. For example, poverty is very critical. Until we think of how to improve on a family, we shall still get girls with teenage pregnancies. No wonder the minister has identified Busia, and we know in Busia with the border trade, people who come from outside Uganda, get our young girls, get them pregnant, and you are pregnant a child, you even don't know the father. So I think this is critical that we need to continue maybe sensitizing the families. Right now, Speaker, the role of the senior women in schools, I don't know whether it's still there, but the Minister of Education really needs to find a way of facilitating the senior women to educate the children, because all of us passed in the schools. I am wondering why now we have a girl is pregnant, a child, she's a child, the child comes in. I remember the other day when Judith had her thing, there was a girl of 11 years with a baby. And when the baby cries, she also cries. So we can imagine what is going to happen to our population. We need to really think and see how we can help. The role of the community. I think we have gone back to the egocentric kind of management of our families. Nobody imagines that my daughter will be the same like this one who is pregnant. So when you see this one being taken, you look on. So I think as government, we need to sensitize the community that these children will form the population of Uganda in the next 10 or 15 years. And there's critical argument that we need to support these children. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, I would be happy for the minister to come here with the status report, especially about the progress of the young people in terms of employment, in terms of population dropout from schools, and also what is the way forward. He has given a statement, but I remain wondering after I go to Busia, what next? Thank you.
Okunjiri, municipality.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the Minister for the statement. Right Honorable Speaker, the intentions by the government to empower the youthful population have been counterproductive in this country, and especially the youth livelihood program. Mr. Speaker, to me, it is like an imprisonment trap for our youth population in this country. Why do you ask a poor youth who is unemployed to provide for, to be in a formal association, to have a business plan, to have a bank account, and in some instances, proof of credit worthiness? To me, it is strange, Mr. Speaker, because these youths actually are helpless. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, this youth, the youth in this country, we are not, do not have formal training, and you are not mentored for them to handle the issues of money. And especially in this country now we are seeing problems, especially in a district like Tororo, Padere, Bukomasimbi, Bushenyi and Rwengu. Most of the youths were arrested because of this money, and of course they are unemployed. Another point, Mr. Speaker, is about the vocational and technical skills. During the last election, NRM government pledged to establish vocational or technical institutes in every sub-county. However, this has never been achieved. Maybe we are waiting to see. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the minister is proposing, and this is common in this country, who proposed the chief guest? I think it should be the parliament. Yes. And Mr. Speaker, this time I want to propose our Right Honorable Speaker to be the chief guest of this World Population Day. Why do you choose all this time the same person to preside over these functions? Every year. We want also to participate. We are in in political parties transition. We want also to participate. But whenever you reach at the function, Right Honorable Speaker, you find everybody putting on white, yellow, as if it is a party function. For us, we want a neutral person this time. Right Honorable Speaker. We feel this is the time for the Right Honorable Speaker to preside over this function, so that we can also attend as members from opposition side. We are tired of seeing yellow on these national functions. Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Member, you could have assisted the House or assisted the Speaker by supplying the rule under which the Speaker will proceed to appoint a guest of honor, but you did not, so I'll go to Manjia.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for the statement on the commemoration of the World Population Day in Busia. In the statement, I did not hear the theme of the day, but Mr. Speaker, when you talk about the high fertility rate, those of us that come from the complicated mountainous terrain have a very high population pressure because of the rate being highest. The rural electrification program could have helped to reduce on this, because as we talk, in the high hills now, people are retiring this early. There being nothing else to do. But the electricity we anticipated, rural electrification would have helped matters, because they would be kept busy watching TV or movies or doing fabrication. So I would call upon the Minister to expedite this program, which has already stalled as we talk, of rural electrification, to help reduce on the high fertility rates. Mr. Speaker, when he mentions about the failure on our population to wash hands, the question that floods my mind is, where did the basic principles of hygiene fail to percolate into our psyche? The National Curriculum Development Center had come up with 8 learning areas after condensing the 45 subjects into 8 learning areas. And one of them was making personal hygiene, ethics and integrity a subject and examinable. Maybe this would help to reduce or avert this challenge
of the lack of personal hygiene principles or basics percolating into our psyche, so that people would know, rather than going everywhere, wash your hands after you have eased yourself. You are reminded to wash your hands. This ought to be inculcated deep into our psyche. Mr. Speaker, about adolescent pregnancy, there is a big challenge. In order to harness the demographic dividend which he mentions, there is need for a deliberate, aggressive campaign to reduce on the consumption of pornography. Pornography, both in print and electronic media, has become a cancer. And our young people, the youth, are consuming it every other day, every other hour, besides alcohol, of course. Red pepper. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I thank the Minister.
Is that Butaleja? Bujiri.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for the statement, and I wish to address myself to the social development challenges that have been explicitly explained by the Minister, especially on hand washing, dropout of early teenage pregnancies. Mr. Speaker, I would really implore our government to come up with a more comprehensive social development strategy, because we have registered a success story on immunization, but we have really been challenged for a long time. Right Honorable Speaker, of recent I was in the constituency, and we were seated having our meeting in a classroom. But as we were discussing, I asked my fellow leaders from the local government to look at the statistics of the school. And in P1, in primary one, there were 380 pupils. And I was commenting about the high rate of school dropout. And I asked now, can we find out the number of pupils that we have in primary 7? Mr. Speaker, we only had 6 girls in primary 7 and 15 boys, a total of 23 pupils in a class of primary 7. Right Honorable Speaker, I think government needs to really stress the issue of social transformation if we are going to move a step further, so that we really take on a strategy, a serious strategy of having an one-to-one confrontation with the families to really help them transform so that they participate in the development of our country, so that the child upbringing information.
Right Honorable Speaker, the problem of school dropouts does not require mere stressing, but the problem that the government has is irrational planning for some of the communities in this country. We have had a deliberate plan of saying that primary schools should be located one in a parish, but some parishes are as big as a district, and you find such kids cannot move to get to school, and they deliberately have to stay home. And other communities have been deliberately condemned to sex practices for survival, because some of the programs do not take care of such communities, like the fishing communities in this country.
Are you still on information?
Yes.
Please.
That is the information I wanted to give.
Thank you, my colleague, for the information. Right Honorable Speaker, I was saying that we need to take a more serious strategy for social transformation of this country. The poverty levels that we have drive these children to go into, to be taken away sometimes by borders, so that they can be able to get social amenities like pads. Sometimes the parents are not able to give them books. So we really need to scale up that. Then on addition, electricity, rural electrification. Because when we look at the theme of the day, we want to take advantage of the youth. But if we scale up the rural electrification program, it will enable the youth to participate in small-scale value addition to agricultural products. And this will give them employment, and then they are able to contribute to the development of our economy. That is my submission, Right Honorable Speaker.
Ngora County. Ngora County.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Minister for a very, very important report. He has been bold in all what he has presented. And I want to thank him so much. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to look at a few things. Number one, how do we make our youth competitive? We have a problem like a skill in Uganda. As we talk now, Mr. Speaker, I do not know how many youth are under this program. I do not know. And I presume, Mr. Speaker, the minister should actually be telling us how far this program has gone. Because it should be a story. When we talk about competitiveness, we should be real. Number two, we should also be talking about, when we talk about, I want to emphasize about electricity. You don't need to talk about electricity, about competitiveness without talking about electricity. You know, for example, like even in Kampala here, recently I was shocked. I passed just here. Can you imagine one day here? There was load shedding. When I stayed around Bukasa, there was load shedding. I am shocked. How do you make a youth to be competitive in an environment where there's still load shedding in this country? And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I want to request government that such issues should be addressed at the very conclusion. And then one thing which is very critical, Mr. Speaker, can you imagine only 27 Ugandans can go to the toilet and have their hands washed? 27%. How about the rest? As they use stones, I don't know whether they use leaves, I don't know. And that's why we still have so many problems in this country. That now means we must actually educate the people that they must wash their hands. And that brings an element from, let me ask the minister, I don't know why this thing is serious. Because up to now, people don't wash their hands. The Minister of Health should be telling us, my good minister here. I want to request her to tell us why the steps the ministry is taking in averting this because we're about to have a crisis. That's why we have this century now. We have so many problems in this country because of these problems here. And then finally, Mr. Speaker, we should be fighting element called defilement. As we talk now, defilement is still serious. Someone of 80 years defiling a child of 12 years. You can imagine 60 years defiling someone of 10 years. And it's taking place in Uganda. And that's why, for example, Mr. Speaker, this one we certainly condemn. And then the last bit, Mr. Speaker, is that there's still a child sacrifice in a country like Uganda. And not this one issue. I want to implore my government to fight against all these vices. And then finally, Mr. Speaker, the choice of the guest of honor is appropriate. I thank you so much.
Leader of the opposition.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the Honorable Minister for reminding us when this day will be taking place. The Minister himself, a former employee of the Population Secretariat. Honorable Speaker, I have 3 issues that I want to ask the Minister to clarify. The first is the policy of this government on population. There are ministers who are on campaign encouraging people to produce or even overproduce. But there are also others who speak about the dangers of overpopulation. So the minister should help this parliament understand what is the policy of this government as regard to the population. You can see in his statement, he's chest thumping, very happy that we have a very big population, because some people think a bigger population is a market, even if they don't have money. Small countries like Qatar has a population of 300,000 and 2 million foreign workers. Abu Dhabi has just about 500,000, with also about, but Abu Dhabi is the second biggest country. I mean, it's a country with the second biggest sovereign fund, nearly approaching $1 trillion. So it is not so much of how many people you have. It is how much you've dealt with the welfare of those people. So you can see the minister says you have a big population, it can be. But then the second point, Right Honorable Speaker, if you look at page 5 and many others, I have selected 5. The minister speaks in if and can. If this youthful population is equipped, so whose job is it to equip it? It can be this, it can be this. Are you an NGO that you have come to Parliament to ask MPs to do your work? Because if you're a government, you should only come to Parliament to say, we've done this, we need to do the following. But you are like an NGO that is making a presentation in a workshop. These are the recommendations you make in your statement. So tell us, what is it that you are doing and what is it that you want to do and which help do you want from us? Finally, Right Honorable Speaker, I think we need to improve on the way we organize the national functions. The Honorable Kajina had a point. I was even reading the Directorate of Parliament, and I see in the protocol, I don't know who designed, and the Vice Chairman of NRM coming either number 7 or something. And not the Secretary General, not anyone else in the NRM, but and NRM, by the way, has more than one Vice Chairperson, but only one is listed in the protocol as number 4 in the country. I don't know under which law. And I don't know where the leaders of other parties fall. Because if a vice chairperson is number 4, what about those who are chairpersons of parties? Which number are they? Right Honorable Speaker, we can accept sometimes inevitably we are made to promote NRM. I was telling the Honorable Mpuga that even the machine that is registering us as we're entering Parliament, I am forced to flash the NRM stamp as I enter Parliament. I said maybe this Parliament will need to hire, to purchase another machine where I put 2 fingers of my party. So therefore, finally, Right Honorable Speaker, I think the way you organize national functions must be national functions. If you want, you can have political rallies and put in Yero and Visanja, but please have the decency of organizing national functions as national functions so all the interested parties can comfortably attend. I want to thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
Honorable member, you used a word that did not sound like English, busanja or something like that. Would you?
Dry banana leaves, because I have seen,
Okay.
it is not listed as one of the symbols of NRM, but I see NRM leaders putting on visanja.
Thank you. Honorable members, in the gallery this afternoon, we have officers from the National Population Council and the United Nations Population Fund. They include the following people: Mr. Charles Zirarema, James Peter Olemo, John Ampire Kaijuko, Timothy Mujera, Joshua Kwibihia, Florence Babulunji Tagola, Catherine Babazi, and Evelyn Kiapi. They have come to observe the proceedings, I think particularly to listen to the debate on this information that has been given. Please join me in welcoming them. You are very welcome. Yes, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister. Yes, please. Response to this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable colleagues and all members who have made a contribution on this important matter in our nation. It is true that we have a policy on population. Our policy is to have a quality population and a population that we can afford. That's why you see that we're investing a lot of resources in educating, especially the girl child. We are reducing maternal mortality rate, infant mortality. We are fighting long and hard and it's working to improve on immunization. And therefore, our policy is to have a quality population. On the issue of the national functions, the leader of opposition, you are most welcome to Busia. And we will receive you as a leader of opposition at a national function. Recently, we held a Women's Day in Dokoro. The commissioners, Madam Sirio Gwar was there, and there was no problem. So members of the opposition, this is your function as well, and you are invited to come and attend. What is?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to also thank the Minister of Finance for accepting the clarification. I have seen on these days, like Labor Day, Independence Day, a war is an international day, but the dressing is, people want to come with yellow t-shirts, buses. Just listen. Listen. No, I want to ask, are you done with talking? That's why I kept quiet. Yeah, because you see, I want just a small background. During UPC government,
Honorable, please, you wrote on clarification. Seek the clarification.
Okay, the clarification I want to seek is what will be the dressing code. Should we all come, NRM comes in its colors, we also come in ours? What would be the dressing code?
Thank you. Honorable Nandala Mafabi, it is free dressing and anyone can come in their colors of choice. What is important is what we are celebrating, and we are celebrating the World Population Day under the theme that we have mentioned. 2 points, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude. I think Honorable Helen raised an important issue which we have mentioned in the report about poverty levels relating to the teenage pregnancies. I think it's important to note that some of these issues are happening, one on moral grounds, because there could not be any other explanation, as Honorable Ngola said, for a 60-year-old person to defile, to impregnate a 12-year girl. It's just on moral grounds. But are also issues that we must sort out, issues of poverty. And that's why I've said, and I will be distributing to all of you a profile of your constituents and your districts and the country, so that you know where you stand in terms of subsistence levels. On average, 68.9% of our population still live in subsistence. But if you get out to the urban centers, we actually go up to 85%. Honorable colleagues, this is a challenge of our time. This is the urgency of now. And as leaders of this nation, this is an issue that we must address. And finally,
Clarification, Honorable. Yes. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, on page 3, in consonance with what you've just been submitting on, you're saying the permanent roofing of houses increased from 56% in 2002 to 70% in 2014. And Honorable Minister, last year I was in West Nile. This year I was in Wusuku, in the eastern. And I actually saw a very, very big number of grass-thatched houses. Yes, in eastern and northern. Yes, Honorable Minister, I want you to be clear. Does this statistic include northern and eastern Uganda? Because I saw in last year and I saw this year. Does this statistic include northern and eastern Uganda, where the majority of the people are actually still sleeping under grass-thatched houses? Which statistic of this are you talking about?
Thank you. Yeah, this is statistics from our National Population Census 2014, and this is scientific. It's not an opinion, and it includes everybody in the country. If actually we were doing well, it is true that we know, for example, the poverty levels, while in other areas, on average, we are below 20%. Northern and eastern are 48%. That's the reason why you see us investing more in programs like NUSAF and others. Yes, there's poverty in those areas and government is doing something. And actually, if the statistics in those parts were doing better as other parts of the country, will now be in 90-95%. That's why the average has come down to 70%. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of hygiene, I would request, with your permission, that the Minister of Health, who was asked what the Minister of Health is doing to address this horrible indicator, 27% of our population are the only ones who can go to a toilet and after they wash with soap and water, which is contributing a lot to the disease burden in this country. To probably make a comment on one or two issues, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Right Honourable, allow me to thank the members for the comments that they have made, especially regarding 3 issues: teenage pregnancy, the fertility rate, and sanitation and hygiene. Right Honourable Speaker, this World Population Day is a great opportunity for us to talk about hygiene and sanitation. It is true that our latrine coverage is still low at 77%. However, even the 77% includes seasonal latrines. The 27% hand washing Right Honorable Speaker, with due respect to all the men in the House, it is mainly the women who wash their hands. The men don't.
That's not clarification.
So, Right Honorable Speaker,
Clarification.
this World Population Day is for the leaders who are in this House to speak to their population in their constituencies, to ensure that one, men wash their hands, and two, we construct pit latrines that are of the required standard. Short of this, we shall continue to have mortality due to preventable diseases like typhoid, cholera, dysentery, and so on and so forth.
I would like to give the information, Right Honorable Speaker. The challenge we have down there is the structures. For example, the parish chiefs are too few. Formerly, when we were...
Point of order.
Order. Mr. Speaker, the minister said men don't wash hands. I thought a man was getting up to say that we wash. And the man is trying to debate, justify why he doesn't wash his what? His hands. So, is a member in order to stand up to justify what the minister said that men not wash hands instead of saying he washes his hands? Is he in order?
Honorable member, do you wash your hands?
Right Honorable Speaker, what I mean is this: to wash hands, men also wash. That's very true. But I want to inform government to see how we can fill the gaps down there, such that if you went to a district like Kumi, you find one parish chief managing about 3 or 4 parishes. In those olden days, a parish chief was a very, very important tool in encouraging the homesteads to have pit latrines. And also, government should now increase the number of health workers. It's good the Minister of Health is here. Now, these days in the rural areas, there are no outreaches by nurses who would go deeper in the villages and teach people about these issues. That's the information that I wanted to give. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister.
Right Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Health has activities through the village health teams that move down to the grassroots and talk to people about this. On the issue of teenage pregnancy, Right Honorable Speaker, 25% of our teenage girls get pregnant before the age of 18. This is the highest percentage, nearly the highest on the continent. And the areas that are most affected are eastern and northern Uganda. Right Honorable Speaker, this is again compounded by child marriages, and if we are to have a quality population, I think as leaders we need to come up and speak against this. In the year 2015, the Ministry of Health launched a campaign against teenage pregnancies. But Ministry of Health cannot handle this alone with the Ministry of Gender. We need all of you to come on board and speak about teenage pregnancies. When we get our children getting pregnant at 11 years, 13 years, and it is happening because of better nutrition, they start their menstruation cycles early. We end up with a lot of complications during labor, and that is why we have a very high fistula rate. Fistula is leaking urine after delivery. We need to address this issue head on, and the leaders in this August House are in position to help us do this. Lastly, on the issue of high fertility, yes, we dropped a little from 6.7, about 6 to 7 children per woman, now down to about 5 children per woman. Right, Honorable Speaker, it would be nice for us to drop down even further to about 4 children per woman, specifically if we are looking at harnessing the demographic dividend. That is having a population that is productive. Right now, we have too many children at a young age, and the government has to manage this. We have to provide social services, both health and education. However, we need to have a population that is productive and can contribute to the economy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. On this matter? Okay.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
Procedure, Right Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Procedure.
Procedure.
Right Honorable Elder. You want me to respect him because of age. Right Honorable Speaker, the mover of the statement, the owner of the statement, closed with the remarks. And I don't understand, I'm at loss, what the input of his fellow ministers, one by one, would amount to. Because in my own understanding, they made a contribution at cabinet level to the statement. And the minister who moved the statement closed with remarks, and the leader of opposition. Now we seem to be like opening it up. So I beg your indulgence.
Honorable members, I'd allowed the minister who brought the statement. I'd allowed the minister who brought the statement to. Would you like to?
That's right.
Please, Honorable. I'd allowed the minister who brought the statement to respond to issues that had been raised. He is the one who asked the minister to supplement what he had said. Those of us who were following the proceedings understood it that way. I think it is in the same breath that the Honorable Minister was rising, but since that is done, maybe we could conclude this matter, go to the next issue.
I just wanted the Right Honorable Speaker to assist in providing information concerning parishes in the country. One of the honorable members was wondering as to whether there were parishes in districts. And I'm trying to inform him that about 6 months ago, I did issue an instruction to all chief administrative officers to recruit parish chiefs in every parish. And by today, we should have parish chiefs in every parish in Uganda. Lastly, if there is a parish in Uganda which is as large as a district, please, I request that that information be brought to the Minister of Local Government so that that parish becomes at least a sub-county. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, in the public gallery this afternoon, we have prefects from Shanamu, Bombo High School, represented by Honorable Edward Sembatia, Honorable Nakate Lillian. They're here to observe the proceedings. Please join me in welcoming them. You're welcome. Thank you, honorable members. That day highlighted will be celebrating World Population Day, except it falls on a day when this house will also be sitting. So we would ask those who can, without depriving this house of what it must do, to join the celebrations in Busia. Next item.
Item 3.2.
Let me just make these changes. Honorable members, I earlier communicated that would be Prime Minister's question time at 3 o'clock. That will now not be there. Items 4, 5, and 6 are deferred to next week. So we'll have the next item and we'll proceed with the others. Thank you.
Item 3.2, statement on the Kilembe mining concession between the government of the Republic of Uganda, Kilembe Mines Limited and Tibet Hima Mining Company Limited.
Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable colleagues, on Wednesday, 28th June 2017, the Leader of Opposition raised on matter of national importance with respect to the mining project at Kilembe Mines, stating that Tibet Hima Mining Company Limited, the company given the 25-year concession by government in 2013, has defaulted on several obligations, which included some of the following. A, failure to deposit 15% performance guarantee on commencement of the concession. B, failure to pay annual concession fees even after 6 months grace period by government. C, exploitation of the Kilembe miners considered assets from which the concessionaire is receiving revenue from electricity, the housing estates, and foundry. That while thanking the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development for issuing a notice of termination of the said concession, the investor continues to asset strip and is vandalizing the mines in addition to ferrying away several assets belonging to government. That while the project coordination committee has given the concessionaire 2 more months, the concessionaire will not be able to cure the defaults and will continue to deplete the mines, including tampering with the river Nyamamba, which might cause a flood. That there are several allegations suggesting that ministers are believed to have helped Tibet Hima to get the concession agreement. Right Honorable Speaker, government undertook to provide an update on the Kilembe Mines concession and respond to the concerns raised by the House. I beg to respond as follows. Right Honorable Speaker, allow me give a background on Kilembe Mines Limited. Kilembe Mines Limited was incorporated in 1950 by a private company to undertake commercial mining activities under the license from the government of Uganda. Kilembe Mines Limited started operations in 1956, operating a copper mine at Kasese and a copper smelting plant at Jinja. In the mid-1970s, a global financial crisis led to a collapse in the commodity prices, including copper, resulting in the 1975 acquisition of government of the interests of private owners in Kilembe Mines. Mining operations went on until 1982, when copper production ceased due to lack of economic viability of the business. Since 1982, when the mining ceased, the plant operated on a care and maintenance basis in anticipation that the mining will resume at a future date when global prices are more favorable. Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, global commodity prices eventually began to recover and the price of copper became more attractive owing to the industrial boom in China and India. Consequently, the government decided to redevelop Kilembe Mines through private sector-led participation. Accordingly, it undertook a due diligence investigation to evaluate the key impediments and divestiture options for the revival. Based on the findings thereof and subsequent stakeholder consultations, government divested Kilembe Mines by way of public-private partnership, PPP, specifically a concession. Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, redevelopment of Kilembe Mines. In government's effort to redevelop Kilembe Mines, a detailed due diligence investigation was carried out in 2009 to identify the key challenges towards resuming mining operations and divestiture options to achieve the same. Wide consultations were thereafter carried out and government came up with the following options. A, sale of government shares in the company to a private investor. The second option, which is option B, a joint venture. Option C was public-private partnership, PPP concession. Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable colleagues, after considering the relevant merits of each option, government opted for the PPP concession mainly because it allows government to remain the owner of the assets and to maintain control of the mines as a strategic asset. Right Honorable Speaker, the tender process. Through the normal government tender process and based on government's choice of a PPP concession for the redevelopment of Kilembe mines, 9 bidders submitted proposals in September 2012, from which 3 were shortlisted to make a final proposal to the government. According to the records, at that time I was not the minister, I need to make that clear. Out of the 3 shortlisted bidders, a consortium led by Tibet Hima Auto Industries Limited presented the most competitive proposal, and subsequently a concession agreement was signed on 6 September 2013 with a special purpose vehicle, Tibet Hima Mining Coal Limited, as required by law and the bidding instructions. The terms of the concession agreement. The concession agreement requires that Tibet Hima undertake the following. A, payment of an upfront signature fee of $4,030,000 US to government. B, payment of an annual concession fee of $1,005,000 US on each anniversary of the concession agreement commencement. C, investment of $175 million US for phase 1 for the first 3 years of the project, focusing on commercializing the estimated 4.5 million tons of ore, as well as the enhancement of the reserve potential in the area. D, carry out exploration studies to expand the reserve base. C, rehabilitate Mobuku 1 hydropower station and expand its capacity from the current 5 megawatts to 17.6 megawatts for a self-resilient renewable energy scheme sufficient for the entire Kilembe project. F, introduce modern environmental friendly mining and processing technology capable of achieving 99% copper concentrates. G, spur growth in the local economy through payment of royalties, taxes, and direct and indirect employment. H, invest in downstream value addition, copper wire factory, planned as well as industrial parks. Right Honorable Speaker, the issuance of notice of default by government. Right Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues, majority of the above undertakings were not met by the concessionaire. Hence, on 28 December 2015, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development issued a notice of default to Tibet for failure to A, pay the annual concession fees of $1,005,000 US by 26 November 2015. B, provide government with a written undertaking from all concessionaires, partners by 26 November 2014. C, provide an exploration guarantee by 1st July 2014. D, submit a feasibility study for the development and construction of a copper smelting by 26 November 2015. E, submit a feasibility study for a project to process the tailings into cobalt. Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable colleagues, the House may need to note that following the issuance of the default notice, government granted the concessionaire more time to cure the said defaults, but which they failed to do. Hence, issuance of termination notice as provided under the concession agreement. Issuance of termination notice. Due to the failure by Tibet Hima to comply with the indulgences granted by government, a notice of termination was served on and received by Tibet Hima Mining on 5th May 2017. The concession agreement requires government and the concessionaire to set up a 5-person winding up commission. 2 of the commission members are appointed by the commissioner, whereas the concessionaire rather, whereas government appoints 2 representatives together with the chairperson, who must be a member of an internationally recognized accounting or law firm selected by government and reasonably accepted to the concessionaire. The concessionaire is required to present to the Commission within 30 days of its establishment a summary report, and within 60 days of its establishment a detailed report on the status of operations as the date of termination, in order for the Commission to be able to make recommendations to government as to whether the Commission and the concessionaire should seek to transfer the assets and operations of the concessionaire to a third party, or to establish plans for curtailment or full cessation of operations, including disposition of assets and their demolition, or removal and restoration of the areas environmentally adversely affected by operations. After issuance of the termination notice, government appointed its 2 representatives to the Winding Up Commission, and the chairperson, because the concessionaire, Tibet Hima, did not concur on the chairperson nominated by government. Another chairperson, Mr. Noah Mwesigwa, was appointed, which necessitated the revocation of the first termination notice to ensure compliance with the concession agreement and prevent unnecessary lawsuits. Government has appointed Ms. Agnes Alaba from the Ministry of Energy and Minerals Development and Ms. Jocelyn Ategeka from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, whereas the concessionaire has appointed Mr. Lee Guo and Mr. B. Lee. Those are Chinese names. Right Honorable Speaker, I have tasked Kilembe Mines, following the concern and the issues raised by the Leader of Opposition, I have tasked Kilembe Mines Limited, that is on site, to be more vigilant in their supervision of Tibet Hima and to ensure that any suspected asset stripping is prevented within the confines of the law and the concession agreement. Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable colleagues, I invite the House to note that under the concession agreement, Kilembe Mines Limited was required to transfer its mining lease exploration license and electricity license to Tibet Hima in order for the concessionaire to take possession of the conceded assets and thereby embark on fulfillment of the required obligation. Tibet Hima therefore has legal rights granted under the license, which explains why they have continued to receive revenues from sale of electricity arising from their power purchase agreement. They have, with the power purchase agreement they have with Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited. When the concession is terminated lawfully under the provisions of the agreement, all licenses will be automatically revoked and will revert back to government. Right Honorable Speaker, several allegations have come up suggesting that there may have been some corrupt practices involving a number of individuals that unfairly influenced the final award of the concession to Tibet Hima. The Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has requested the IGG to urgently investigate whether there were any corrupt actions attributed to any individuals who participated in this concession before and after it was awarded to Tibet Hima Mining Co. Limited, and to take appropriate action. I beg to lay on the floor of this House, and I beg to lay on the table the Minister's letter to the IGG dated and received on 3rd July 2017.
The records capture that copy of the letter to the IGG from the minister.
Right Honorable Speaker and Honorable colleagues, I invite the House to note that government is firmly on top of this matter and is still committed to ensure that the redevelopment of Kilembe mines for the betterment of the people of Kasese, Kilembe, and Uganda at large. I do hereby lay this statement on the table, Right Honorable Speaker.
Let the records capture that. Thank you, honorable ministers. Honorable members, you will recall that this matter came from the leader of the opposition, and a directive was made from the chair that a statement be made covering the subject as raised by the leader of the opposition. That statement now has been made, and it's a ministerial statement. It attracts a debate, so we'll have a short debate on this matter. But in the public gallery this afternoon, we have people from Chadwick, Namate Primary School, Entebbe, Representative Honorable Tumusime Rosemary and Honorable Nansubuga Rosemary Seninde. They're here to observe the proceedings. Please join me in welcoming them. You are very welcome. So we'll start the debate now on this matter. And I see the members that have risen. Okay. I see. The members that have risen are the ones that are going to speak. Okay. Let's start with the Bulamoji.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Minister, for the statement that you have made. I just want to comment on one point related to what you have just submitted to this House. Because in your statement, among the alternatives that were available, you were talking about the possibility of government transferring or selling off shares to private developer, something like that. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is the different companies where government has got shares or stakes, for that matter. And I'm aware that this government has got shareholdings in a number of companies. We have Lugazi, government holds shares there. There's Kalangala Infrastructure Services. There are other different companies and organizations where government holds shares. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is what are these different companies that government has stake in, where government holds these shares? Why is it that all along, when we have budgets presented in this House, I have not seen anywhere that we are expecting revenue from government to government by way of earnings from shares, from investments of these different companies? And if you please, Mr. Speaker, I would request that we shall need, the House will need to get the details of where government has got stakes, where government has invested, such that we can know how much government has invested in the different companies and what value is held there in terms of the money that the government has sunk in those different organizations. We need that declared. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Fort Portal Municipality.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, this is another very sad moment for us as a country, where we make huge losses, and these losses are always as a result of a few individuals actually who get handouts from the quack investors. As you can see, the expectations that we had as a country from this company, Tibet, were so high. By this time, we would not have our shilling suffer. We would be earning foreign exchange. By this time, we would have so many of our youth employed. By this time, the region where I come from economically we would be realizing a lot of benefits out of the Kilembe mines. But because of the lack of a proper system where we have to get real due diligence of the companies, can you imagine? Just look at the reasons which have been forwarded, the simple conditions which this company should have met. The fact that we cannot have an early detection mechanism of selecting proper companies, I think something has to be done. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you go and really take stock of the Uganda Investment Authority, you will really have a big problem. The capacity of the Uganda Investment Authority to really handle sophisticated, because these businesses we are talking about, they are multi-billion businesses, and they really need sophisticated skills. But when you go to the Uganda Investment Authority, it is lacking. Actually, some of the people who go to China, they end up being tourists. And these are our technical people who go to China to negotiate on our behalf. And I think this is something which I feel the government really must take seriously. How many people have been held responsible for this kind of mess? And this is not the only company where we are seeing problems. So we really need a serious accountability from the executive, from the front bench here, to the country for this big loss that we are seeing out of negligence, getting these quack Chinese whom we have seen even in other sectors of the roads and others. They are just plundering our country, and I think this must stop, Right Honorable Speaker. So I hope the investigations by the IGG are quickened such that we really have the culprits to book.
Remember, just on a technical point, really, if there are investigations going on this matter, would debating it at this stage be a convenient thing to do, or should we just be raising? No, please. These are serious matters. These are serious matters. If the investigations that have been requested for are ongoing right now, how do we proceed with the debate of this nature? That's what I'm seeking. Do we need to guide ourselves on how we speak on the subject, or should we? Yes. Yes, procedure from Kasese Municipality.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. The investigations that are ongoing are about the allegations that some officials from the ministry colluded with the investors and were bribed to award the project to Hima Tibet. So I don't think that can stop us from debating this.
So how do you debate it? That's what I'm asking. What is the debate about? Because the debate, the issue of the matter that is being raised is that there are problems with this concession, the way it was issued, the way it is being managed, and things like that. And now, what has led to this situation is that some people possibly had compromised certain principles. That's why we have ended up this way. I'm just alerting you that we debate in a way that does not cross the lines of what is under investigation. Are we clear on this? So if you start crossing the line, yes, procedure from the Attorney General.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I think your observation is pertinent. Our debate can only be limited to the steps that the government is taking to address the situation. But as to the nitty-gritty of what happened, I think our debate could have the effect of prejudicing the investigations. But as for the proposed steps by the Minister, yes, we could go ahead and debate.
Order. Thank you.
Point of order.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, at the time when the concession was given to him at Bet, the Honorable who was yielding the floor was actually the Attorney General. And that means that the mess which is in Kilembe between government and government and the people actually was brought by him. Would it be procedurally right because he didn't do his work? I'm still coming. I'm still coming. Procedurally, Right Honorable Speaker, procedurally, the Attorney General the Attorney General Chambers must do due diligence before they commit government to any contract. Is it therefore in order, Right Honorable Speaker, for the Honorable Minister, who was a minister, and the Attorney General then, to raise on the floor and give procedure here when actually is the source of the problem?
Right Honorable Speaker, before you make a ruling, I want to raise on a factual clarification. As a matter of fact, it is not correct that by the time this concession was granted, I was the Attorney General.
I was actually going to ask the Land Attorney General to confirm or deny, because that would be proper procedure for me before I rule on facts that I don't know. So he has proceeded well. Honorable Land Attorney General, were you part of the team that dealt with this concession?
Right Honorable Speaker, I want to confirm to you and this House that at the time of granting the concession, I was not yet the Attorney General. I was not the Deputy Attorney General. I was not even in the Ministry of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, for the first time in this August House, I have heard the concept of prejudicing investigations for the first time, which is strange, because I believe actually the debate in this House can help the investigations in very many ways. There are times when members have come up with documentary evidence here and laid them on the table, which have helped investigating arms of government to follow up the leads. The only aspect I know of in our rules that would prohibit debate is when a matter is in a court, the concept of sub judice. So I do believe, Mr. Speaker, allowing this debate to take its form in any way, especially on this very serious report and this particular statement, would not only help the investigative arm of government, the IGG, but also help the minister to know what could have gone wrong, especially hearing from all the stakeholders. So I would want to implore you, Mr. Speaker, not to introduce a concept of prejudicing investigations and shielding debates from this House. I beg to request.
You see, there's something they call decency of procedure, and you respect them. If a particular agency is actually carrying out an inquiry on a particular matter, would it be decent for us to also begin debating it? Would it be decent? You know, sometimes it's just basic decency, really. Sometimes it's practice, respected practice. It doesn't have to be written anywhere. Practice, and that's why it's talk about practice and procedure. So is it decent for us to start debating matters that are under investigation by the IGG? Would it be decent for us to do that? That is the question we're asking. If it is decent, proceed. If it is decent to you, proceed. But in the opinion of the presiding officer, in the opinion of the presiding officer, in the opinion of the presiding officer, it would not be decent for us to start tackling factual matters that are under investigations by the IGG. You see, it would not be. That's why I'm saying let's structure our debate in such a way. I'm not saying we're not going to debate this, but please, if the speaker is speaking and you begin behaving as if you are sitting on pins, doesn't help. Let's listen to each other, and then I allow you to speak. So it would be proper for us to structure our debate in such a way that we do not deal with those other issues. But the debate will go on. I'm just alerting members, let's deal with the issues as they were raised, and then we conclude. Please. That's all I'm saying. No, somebody was already on the floor. Procedure from Tororo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The procedural point I was trying to raise is that actually we may be at a risk of debating a matter which is under investigation, as you have said. And therefore, I would propose that you send this matter to a relevant committee of the House for further investigations, such that the committee gives a report, and then we debate from an informed point of view.
No, you see, honorable members, please. Let's not again spoil this debate. The issue is simple. This matter was raised by the leader of the opposition in certain specific terms. And the presiding officer directed that the minister should come with a statement to respond to those issues. In the course of the response, it has now been, documents have been laid before the House that some aspect of this issue is actually under investigation. If somebody has information that can help with the investigation, this would not be the place to come. It would be to go to the IGG. Yes. Okay? It will not be here to come with the information and lay it on the table here. It would be useless for those purposes. Take it to the Inspectorate of Government and they'll deal with it. But there are aspects of this issue that have been raised that we can debate. And that is why I'm saying let's debate those aspects. Okay? Let's proceed. No further procedure on this matter. Let's proceed. Ajumani.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity. I thank the Minister for the report, but however, I need some clarification. In paragraph 13, she did mention that when government nominated one person to be a chair, it was rejected. I needed to know the criteria that was supposed to be followed so that we get to understand why the person was rejected. Then to Right Honourable Speaker, she said government is on top of these issues. And she also mentioned it is for the good of people in Kilembe, Busia, and the entire country. I am proposing that as the investigation is on, the people in Kilembe must be involved in the entire interactions, because we have often experienced challenges when an investment is taking place in a specific place. We strongly believe that the immediate communities will benefit, and yet on the other side you find that they do not. Lastly, Right Honourable Speaker, on the issue of the stakeholders under investigation, we need to have a time period, because from the history she has told us it is from 2013 when the project started, and now it is 2014. When more time is taken, at times evidences are killed. Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker.
Kasese Municipality.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. I'm glad that the Minister was in conformity with the issues that were raised by the Leader of Opposition, but I need clarification on the payment of statutory, non-payment of statutory dues, which include royalties and the statutory deductions that were made from the employees of HIMA Tibet, which were not submitted to Uganda Revenue Authority, because I am aware a demand notice was issued to the said investors. Then also, they were supposed to submit compliant financial statements for 2 years, the social impact assessment, and an environmental audit report. I would like to know, was this done? Then we also requested for the termination letter to be laid on table, which I have not witnessed being done. And then I also want the minister to clarify on the specific loss that has resulted from the breach so that Ugandans can know how much they have lost from the sale of power, rent, the foundry, the pole treatment plant, and other statutory obligations that Hima Tibet was supposed to meet. Then also, in the concession agreement, they were supposed to pay 15% exploration guarantee worth about $16.5 million. I would like to know, was this done? Probably this can salvage us from the loss. And then a compliant feasibility study report before the mine reopens, since the minerals are public non-renewable resources. Before you allowed them to actually operate, was this feasibility study report submitted? And also, they were supposed to provide an investment plan which government would use to benchmark the investments and enable the verifications, because some of these could have been the reason why the investor took advantage of the situation and played around with our public resources. Then I need to know from the minister if a feasibility study for the smelter project, which was supposed to be submitted by 2014, was done. And finally, we have a problem where water accumulates in the underground mining tunnels, and this is likely to cause a disaster to the population that is neighboring the mines. What is the plan of government to ensure that this does not happen now that the investors did not even do it and they are already packing their bags, before we come out with another disastrous situation resulting from the non-compliance of the investors by way of pumping out the water, which has now accumulated and is about to drain out. Thank you.
Thank you. Ndora?
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker, and I want to thank the Minister for this statement, although I find a problem with it in most of the areas. And the honourable members, when we were passing the private-public partnerships law, some of us had insisted that these PPs be laid before Parliament before they could be sanctioned. And this is now one of the dangers of allowing the executive to control PPEs without parliamentary scrutiny. That's where the problem now lies, and I hope in the future we will bring up an amendment. Now, when you read the minister's statement, you realize we needed, first of all, to look at this concession agreement for us to appreciate whether what the minister is telling us is true or not. Or at least she should have read the concession agreement on the table for us to appreciate as a parliament. But that notwithstanding, when you read the minister's statement, and I will straight away go to number 7, you can realize that some of the terms of the agreement itself, crucial as they are, don't seem to have a time frame. Look at 7D, carry out exploration studies to expand the reserve base. Was there a timeline for this company to do this exploration? Look at E, F, G, H, very crucial terms, but don't seem to have a time frame, open-ended. So any quack investor would use this lacuna to do things at its pace, and the country loses. Now, when you look at the statement itself again, on number 8, Honorable Minister, you claim that on 28th December, the minister issued a notice of default to Tibet. Now, when you issue that notice of default for things that happened as far back as July 2014, and remember, this agreement was executed in 2013. Hardly within a year, you were on notice that this company is going to default. Now, you issue a notice of default, a company having defaulted in the first year of inception, but you again wait to issue a termination notice 1 year and a half later. Why do you wait for this time and allow the company to actually not only asset strip, but also continue enjoying free things? Is this how this country will continue to be managed by you? Cry the beloved country. Now, when you go to number 14, Honorable Minister, you are telling us that you have tasked Kirembe Mines to be more vigilant. Now, the Kirembe Mines Limited, you are telling to be more vigilant. Under 15, you are telling us that under the agreement, it was required to transfer everything to this company, Tibet Hima, and it did transfer. So, how is Kirembe Mines going to be more vigilant when it has no stake because it transferred everything? And how is it on the ground, which ground is in the possession and occupation of a different company to whom all rights were transferred? I seem to find a big contradiction there. And Honorable Minister, I believe you needed to act faster than today. This statement does not give us the hope that you are actually on top of the situation. I am afraid, even by the time you go into this process of arbitration, I am a lawyer myself, I know what it means. 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years down the road, this company will still be in operation, earning, and this country getting nothing. Is there a way you can look through the agreement critically and ensure that you take immediate possession of the assets while the arbitration and litigation, if any, are taking place when this particular defaulter is not in possession and occupation and continuing to steal our resources? I thank you.
Thank you. Rute?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to thank the Minister for the statement, but also add my voice that for a period of more than 1 year, there was a violation or a breach of a fundamental term of the contract. And then somebody within the ministry was just sitting to watch as this breach takes place one after the other. I would want to find out what actions they are taking on these officers who are monitoring this specific concession. Secondly, the word notice of termination has been used here, and I'm not now clear on what is happening. Because further down you say that by appointing the 2 persons, it was necessary to revoke the notice of termination. So at some point you are communicating in the statement that you issued the notice of termination, and then later you are saying you have revoked the notice of termination. So what is it that is happening at the moment? Have you terminated? Because if you are appointing some 2 persons to the commission for winding up, it means you must have terminated. So you should clarify exactly what is the status of the termination. Lastly, this is coming after, I think, RVR, the Rift Valley Railways, which was also a concession. And now this is another concession. I think this is a big sign that all these concessionaires that the government has entered into are not delivering. It would be prudent at the moment that the Ministry of Finance brings all those agreements of similar types to Parliament and tell us an update on progress on those specific concessions, because we don't want to be handling one by one, yet there are many out there where we are having this problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Busongora North, did you want to speak on this matter?
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. I would like the Minister to clarify the following. When government sold its shares, what happened to the shares that Kilembe Mines has? When government sold its shares to Himati Bet, in what percentage does, for example, Himati Bet have its shares? What is the percentage of the shares that Himati Bet has? You should have stated it here, which I have not seen, Honourable Minister. And those, the rest that are not owned by Himati Bet. 2, under the concession, Himati Bet is supposed to carry out exploration studies, but the minister is not committing herself as to whether the financing of this exploration was to be done by Himati Bet or by government. If by government, why didn't government do the exploration before the sale of these mines? Right Honourable Speaker, I also want the Minister to clarify to this House and the people of Uganda and the people of Kasese how government intends to curtail further asset stripping of Kilembe Mines assets, and yet Himati Bet company is the one in charge of security at the gates that actually lead to and out of Kilembe Mines. So who is going to control and curtail the stripping of assets by this company, and yet they are the ones in charge 100%?
Finally, Kabula, then I have the leader of the opposition.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. I've looked at the statement of the Minister. My clarification is simple. I'm seeking from her. When she found out, or when the government found out, that these people have been defaulted in 2015, what has been the government doing? Because it means where government has a controlling interest in a company, when you pass the Audit Act, that company must be audited each every year. That's means the Auditor General has been giving out all these faults to the ministry that something has been happening. What made them delay all this time up to 2017? 2, I would like to concur with the Honorable Nwagaba. Why don't you take now to freeze the assets and accounts of these people to recover the money? Because if it's a breach of contract, as you say, I would have expected that the annominations and concessions which have been not made, this is the step we've taken and we've recovered such amount. What steps are there?
Leader of the opposition, and then I come to government.
They don't even have money.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker and colleagues, I first of all would like to thank this Parliament for giving this matter the seriousness it deserved, because it's a matter touching loss of money by government, loss of wealth by Ugandans, and possibly loss of opportunities for Ugandans. Right Honourable Speaker, when we raised this matter, it had been a matter of concern for the people in Kilembe and Kasese and the entire Rwenzori sub-region, that we have an investor who in the consortium agreement committed himself to changing the lives of the people. How did he commit himself to changing the lives of the people? Through payment of royalties, through developing industries that would give jobs to our people, through ensuring that he carries out environmental impact assessments and ensuring that he puts in place mechanisms that will ensure the environment is taken care of. Not only that, Right Honorable Speaker, but also to ensure that he pays his dues, which would later be used by the government of Uganda to deliver services to the people. Right Honorable Speaker, like my colleagues have mentioned, to me, I even see there is no contract between the government of Uganda and the investor. I'm glad that the minister has stressed everything in white and black. Congratulations, Madam Minister. You have been quick to point out all the errors that were committed by the investor. And all these errors, in fact, tantamount to a no contract between us. First, the contract must, the concessionaire came in the form of a consortium of 6 companies. And the condition was that these 6 companies must all commit. To date, none of the concessionaires, the consortium members, has showed up. So in effect, we are not dealing with anyone. 2, the matter that we raised was that on inception of the concession, the companies, now the consortium, commits to paying the annual concession fees to the government of Uganda, which has never been done. They were supposed to pay the 15% of the consortium fee. I mean the concession fee, the guarantee, which they have never done. They are supposed to pay royalties to the local governments for development, which they have never done. So in the first place, are we having any contract anyway? That is one question I want to know, so that we can even go on the legalese of, terminating this contract and doing this. We are going into problems. Because to me, in my paralegal type of law, I would say that there is no contract at all. There is no binding agreement between the government of Uganda and the investor. Because if the agreement was that you have applied as a consortium, therefore all the consortium members should commit. Only one has shown up and the man has not said, the others have withdrawn. He is moving alone. That was not whom we gave the contract. He has never paid us anything. And then we hurry into giving the man everything that we have, when there is no document legally binding him with the government of Uganda. If I come back to what the Honorable Nwagaba said, that possibly giving government the sole mandate of executing PPs, the private-public partnerships with the investors, is another problem that we are going into. But I can also say the ministry, Right Honorable Speaker, and I think now that is the matter you said we should not debate, and I will carefully tread into that. There was something that kept the members in the ministry closed to the defaults. I don't want to go into that. I only pray that the findings of the IGG be known to us, because it would help us in the future. There was a lot of carelessness. There is a letter here, Right Honorable Speaker, which I will want to lay on table, that was written by one of the ministry officials and is a director who is in charge of parastatal monitoring unit. And the director was writing to the chairman or the chief executive officer of Tibet Hima. The director is writing his letter on the 22nd of January 2015. But the director is referring to the letter which was written by his minister on the 28th of December 2015. He's writing a letter on the 22nd of January 2015, referring to a letter written by his minister on the 28th of December 2015. The director writes a letter before the minister writes, but is writing to the chief executive officer of Hima Tibet and is writing it in adverse. You can see such a kind of carelessness, and then you think you have people in offices. These may look small errors, but in law, they may tend to be detrimental. And you know, when the executive received this letter, the executive officer of Hima Cement, I'll lay it on table, he was quick to point out that since he got the contract, he has never been called for any meeting to discuss anything to do with how they will manage the consortium, how they will manage anything in relation to the concession agreement. An indication that when he was given the piece of meat, it was up to him to decide where to put what, who to give how much, and how to give it. And everybody was in slumber. Right Honorable Speaker, I wish to lay on table this letter that was talking about the notice of default for non-payment of concession fees from the ministry, and for purposes of record, that was written by one Christopher Mugisha, who was the director of Parastatal Monitoring Unit. What I noted there is the lack of seriousness on the part of our officers, that you can refer to a letter of your supervisor, and yet the letter you are talking about is written much later than the one you're writing. But also where this letter I wish to lay it on table, Right Honorable Speaker.
Know what the letter is. It was addressed to who?
The letter is
describe the letter.
The letter is from the Ministry of Finance and Planning and Economic Development, addressed to the chairman stroke CEO, Tibet Hima Mining Company Limited, dated 22nd January 2015. And possibly, if I may just read the letter, and where I felt a little bit disappointed, that the author of the letter says reference is made to the notice of default issued on 28th December 2015 by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. And it goes further to mention the issues where he has defaulted. But what caught my eye is that I thought he was referring to this letter because he was making an additional statement, but surprisingly, the letter comes earlier than the letter he's referring to. Well, the minister did allude to the letter that was talking about the notice of default that was sent forward. It is just a call to our officers that when we are making communications from offices, we better be careful about these issues. We may not know whether really it was an error or it was intentional because of the other something. Right Honorable Speaker, I also would like to lay on table a response from the CEO of Tibet Hima, addressed to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, also to the Minister of Energy and Mineral Development. It is also talking about the notice of default on performance of concession and outstanding issues. What caught my eyes in this letter, Right Honorable Speaker, is the fact that even the person we are dealing with still feels he was not given enough time, he has never been called for a meeting, that he has been abandoned, and that he looked forward to that time. This was in 2016. He wrote it 25th January 2015, responding to the letter that had been sent from the ministry on 28th December 2015. But he says, he accuses the minister of giving him a notice of default before they even call him for a meeting. He still wants to take us at a ransom. And I would like to say that the ministry relaxed in handling this matter. It is still unfortunate that even up to now, the ministry still wants to relax. We can still say the unit that has been put in place to investigate the matter can go ahead to handle the matter. But our issue is, do we even have a body that we are dealing with legally? In a situation where they did not even meet the first conditions that would have made them legally binding to the concession. Because to me, I believe there is no person we are dealing with. But finally, Right Honorable Speaker, is the aspect of this person being given our wealth, the electricity, the management of the foundry, the management of all the properties that belong to the government of Uganda. And he's enjoying them at free will, without paying even URA. And URA is all over Ugandans who are earning even peanuts to ask them for taxes. But these ones who are enjoying free money, nobody wants to even touch them. As Ugandans, where are we benefiting from in this agreement? The biggest problem that they had, these investors of ours, you know, the issue has been we attract investors and they give our people jobs. There were no jobs given to Ugandans. The small jobs that were given to the Ugandans were those for the casual laborers who would go hitting huge stones. We want to say, Right Honorable Speaker, that as a country we don't have to sit and watch as we get depleted of our own resources. Serious action needs to be taken. The issue that is being investigated is the issue of whether there was an underhand in the award of the concession. The issue on whether Tibet Hima has fulfilled its obligations in as far as the concession agreement is concerned, I think that is not in a debate. The only thing we want to know is to ask the minister to let Ugandans know how much they have lost in this bad deal. Two, to just ask the minister that terminate and we get someone serious who can run the mines. And then three, like the Honorable Centenary did mention, is to assure our people that the mismanagement of the mine is not going to cause serious effects in terms of flooding of the mine. And therefore, government needs to take serious interest in this, because when someone knows that they are no longer going to manage and that there is a system that has been put in place to kick them out, their efficiency and effectiveness, which they have lacked anyway, may not be assured. May I therefore request the minister, who has been honest enough to tell the country that these people have defaulted in all ways, to the fact that there may even not be any contract between the government of Uganda and the Tibet Hima, to just tell the country that Tibet Hima, pack and go, so that we can open up this concession to serious Ugandans. We have Ugandans who can mine, who can manage that mining section. Tibet Hima should just pack even tomorrow, because there is no legal binding document between us and them.
Thank you, Lob, for giving way, and thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I would also like to thank the Minister for the job well done in presentation of this. But just like the Leader of Opposition has stated, there is not only lack of transparency in the various concessions, but there is also a lot of fraud. You realize that all the ingredients of fraud have been spelled out in your presentation. And therefore, if there is fraud, why are we even still continuing to treat these people with kids' gloves, really? Definitely, you realize that in Africa, we've lost a lot through mining. And Right Honorable Speaker, one time when we were benchmarking in Europe, someone was lightly joking and they said, it is very funny that the value of currency and strength of a currency is measured in gold, but Africa, where gold comes from, has the weakest currency. And countries like the United Kingdom that have no single mine of gold have stronger currencies. The way we are handling our mineral resources leaves a lot to desire. Those should be the key areas where government should even invest directly. You've trained human resource. $50 million probably could start up that Kilembe mines.
You rose on information, Honorable Member.
And the information I would like to give the law that in as much as it is clear that these people have done nothing to even help the local community, but as a government, as the people of Uganda, we've indeed harnessed nothing, and there is a lot of fraud. It should be cancelled ab initio, and they should be chased off our properties immediately.
Leader of the opposition, we need to make a way forward on this matter.
Yes, Right Honorable Speakers, I wind up and maybe wait for the way forward. It was also disheartening, Right Honorable Speaker, that the office of the Attorney General, which is supposed to be the office that is supposed to guide the ministers, also asks the minister for guidance. I have here a letter I think the minister was asking for guidance from the Attorney General. The minister was asking for for guidance from the Attorney General, and he sounded really helpless. The minister wrote and said,
Honorable, please,
yes,
please.
Yes, he was referring to termination notice for the Kilembe Mines concession. Said Honorable William Byarhanga, Attorney General. And he says reference is made to the subject matter and to my earlier letter, which he referenced. As I advised in the correspondence in reference, the Kilembe Mines concession has not performed to the expectations, and indeed both the economy and the country are not deriving value as expected. My ministry is of the view that there has been breach of contract, and our intention is to issue relevant notice of termination. This is therefore to further request, as a follow-up on our earlier correspondence, for your timely guidance and advice on the matter. Writing indicating that really he has been communicating for guidance from the Attorney General, who is supposed to guide the government, who is supposed to guide the minister.
Honorable, I think the point is made. The point is made. Let's find a way
I also
on how
wish
to handle this matter.
lay it on table. Right Honorable Speaker, I just wanted to show the laxity in handling the matter of Kilembe Mines, and I beg that this matter onwards be considered seriously.
Thank you. Honorable members, and I address this question to the Attorney General. When I first was at law school and they were teaching me the law of contract, they told me that the first thing you talk about are the parties to the contract. Are there parties in this contract? The initial people who negotiated and were supposed to be part are not there. Are there parties to this contract? Is there a contract? Two, conditions that were supposed to be part of this contract have been breached. Fundamental breaches. Why should we treat it as if it is a breach of a warranty? Why? Learned Attorney General, you are going to give this House a way forward on this matter?
Yes.
And we finish.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Having looked at the so-called termination notice, yeah, so-called, and I'm using my words selectively, because in my view, there was no necessity for a termination notice. Why? Because under clause 231 of the concession agreement, which I want to quote verbatim, the commencement date shall be deemed to occur on the occurrence and continued satisfaction of the following conditions precedent. Meaning that if any of these conditions was not fulfilled, being conditions precedent, there was no contract. There being no contract, there was no reason to issue a termination notice. You terminate if there was a contract. There was no contract because it never commenced. It is something we treat in law as being void right from the beginning. The relationship is void ab initio. Ab initio means right from the start.
It never started.
It never started. So, being the position, the government should have exercised its right to treat this agreement as if it never existed and proceed to do what it wanted to do with its asset. That is my interpretation. Well, the way forward is without any obligation to inform the concessionaires, government is in order to take over the asset immediately. But as a matter of courtesy, the notice government will be giving is not a notice of breach. It will be notice of takeover. You see, when you say termination, it connotes that there was a relationship. And my view is that there was no relationship. But government can take over and notify the parties that it has taken over its asset, and even in my view,
Point of clarification, Right Honorable Speaker. Point of clarification, Right Honorable Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted the Attorney General, because the Attorney General,
Order.
A letter issued tabled by the leader of opposition was to the effect that finance wrote to him seeking advice. So the clarification I am seeking from the Attorney General is whether he has actually offered this advice to finance.
Chair, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm very worried. because the Attorney General's interpretation about this statement means that this contract or the negotiations went without consultation of the Office of the Attorney General. All contracts, I thought, must be entered into in consultation in the Office of the Attorney General. If you look at the options even they are proposing, it's a public-private partnership. But the people who negotiated came from government. They didn't bother even to consult the Office of the Attorney General. The worry is, if these people took money and it was a fraud, what are we doing? Arrest them.
There are two different things. The involvement of the Attorney General is in regard to the negotiation and conclusion of the agreement. That could have been done. But the implementation is a different thing. We are now talking about the implementation of the agreement after it had been negotiated. Now, in the agreement, there were conditions precedent which were agreed upon by the parties, the Attorney General inclusive. A condition precedent means that it is such a condition that if it is not fulfilled, then there is no agreement. That's why they call it condition precedent.
Clarification. Thank you, the Land Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, sir, the clarification I want from the Attorney General is where those condition precedents have been performed partly. Because as you saw from the statement, not all the conditions were actually breached. The minister cited the one of undertaking from the consortium and another one. But there were several other conditions, including the payment. So in the event that actually there was a part performance to that contract, would it still amount to, would it still lead to automatic termination?
Land Attorney General.
In a contract, there are what we call fundamental terms, breach of which render the contract null and void. But there are other terms which may not necessarily entail breach, treating the agreement as having been null and void. Like, warranties. Those are also terms of a contract. But I have read this Article 2.3, which categorically states that the following were conditions precedent. Now, if you don't observe any of the conditions precedent, then there was no contract. Notwithstanding the fact that both parties signed the agreement. You signed the agreement, but you all agree that that agreement will be treated as binding if these conditions have been fulfilled. And in my view, looking at the agreement now, it is my considered opinion that there was no agreement and that there was no contract and that the relationship could be avoided at the instance of the government. And I am using those words technically, at the instance of the government, not the other party.
On what matter do you raise, Ajuri? Point of order?
On a point of order, Right Honourable Speaker.
Point of order.
Right Honourable Speaker, the way the Attorney General is speaking is as if this particular agreement was not drawn by his office. And yet, under Article 119, Clause 4B, the functions of the Attorney General shall include the following: to draw and peruse agreements, contracts, treaties, conventions, and documents by whatever name called to which the government is a party, or in respect of which the government has an interest. Is the learned Attorney General really in order to impute to this House that even at the point of drawing, because the way he's talking is as if it wasn't them, like that song, it wasn't me.
No.
Is he in order? And yet it is the constitutional responsibility of the office of the Attorney General to draw and peruse.
Honorable members, the agreement was drawn, perused, and certified by the Land Attorney General. And that he has said so. After signing, the parties were supposed now to implement the agreement. But in the agreement, the Attorney General put in clauses that say if these are not done, then there cannot be a contract. For this contract to be valid, first do the following things. This contract which we have already signed, for it to become operational, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the Attorney General had finished its responsibility to certify the contract. That was okay. But now the implementation was on the party. The party that should have done that did not do it, rendering the contract null and void as according to the Land Attorney General. That's what he's saying. So there is no breach of any order here. Member for a jury, we are proceeding properly.
Clarification? Clarification?
Land Attorney General? Clarification from
Yes.
who? Can we... Now, I don't know on what matters members are raising.
Clarification before he stands up, Mr. Speaker.
Procedure?
Right, Honorable Speaker, we've had, this is one rare one, very unusual that the Attorney General agrees in principle with the law and accepts to take with humility to advise government and the public. In fact, this is one of the, I was stamping my feet here. If we should be able to acknowledge that Attorney General did a great job setting the conditions. Now, when we say setting conditions precedent, when we use the word precedent, I think we are not all of us benefiting from that. Something that you do before, and these all conditions are equal, are at par, regardless whether you do 9 out of 10. If you don't do the 10th one, you've breached. So really, I want, with humility, I am seeking procedural guidance, whether after hearing from the Attorney General, we had almost come to the way forward. In fact, I wanted only to hear that the Attorney General is undertaking to go and advise the executive accordingly so that this is put to an end, which he has done to this House, and probably come back and report on the Attorney General does not implement. I have eventually said what I wanted to say, whether it was procedure or what not.
Yes, please, let's close this matter now.
Right Honourable Speaker, for me, I'm elated. The notice which the Minister of State for Privatization gave is sufficient because she says, after citing the breaches. She says, this is therefore in accordance with clause 24.5.1, which provides, if an event of default with respect to a party has occurred and is continuing, the other party may give the defaulting party a notice of termination, in brackets, a termination notice, to give you a termination notice. And she continues to say, this letter therefore serves as a termination notice and will be effective from 5th July 2017. The termination notice dated 18th April, which was received by Tilbert Hima Company Limited on the 5th June, is hereby revoked. In my view, this letter clearly terminates the relationship between the government and the company. Now, as to what happens after termination,
Clarification.
it is at
Please
the
let
option.
the Attorney General make the point, then you seek the clarification. It's in the middle of a sentence.
It is at the option of the government to do what it deems fit to take over its asset.
What are you talking about?
What I said is not called for. I had not looked at the concluding sentences. Now, the concluding sentences have made me appreciate that what was done was the proper thing.
So you are withdrawing.
It is only Katse giving them notice that the relationship is
Clarification.
terminated, and it suffices.
Clarification. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened to the Attorney General informing this House that the contract is null and void. How do you terminate something that's null and void? I don't know in law. Because he said that the contract is not there. It's null and void. So we are terminating what?
You see, it is true, and I want to repeat, that because of the failure to fulfill conditions precedent, the contract is null and void. But as a matter of fact, so many things had happened between the parties that the parties now cannot just jump out without properly putting it on record. Steps had been taken, notwithstanding the fact that the contract was not there. Parties had entered possession, for example, of some assets. Now, to clear all that, government is in order to give this notice so that the party which had taken some steps, no matter pursuant an illegal or a void agreement, knows that it has no more
Procedure.
Right, Honourable Speaker. Right, procedure. Right, Honourable Speaker. I want to thank the Attorney General for the attempt he's making. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General is impressing us. And as a land friend, I am seeing you are now trying to run out of your line. And Mr. Speaker, would it be procedure okay? I saw how the Attorney General got this file from the Minister. Couldn't he have some more time to go and read these things? Because even he stated early on that he was not an Attorney General as of then, when this contract took place, so that he comes back with a better position. Otherwise, he's losing. He's going to lose where he started from, yet he was beginning to impress us. Now I've given a procedural matter and I've asked to speak. I am an old member here.
I think for those who have followed properly, he has not contradicted himself. He has not contradicted himself. He has been consistent. And on the, but he says void ab initio, but there are people who have taken possession of the property based on this contract. How do you deal with them? That's the point he's making. If it had been void ab initio with the parties apart without anything taking place, it would be that you did notice. But this particular person is in possession of this place. How do you get them out? It's by that notice which is saying the one that was given before is sufficient, no further notice is required. That's what the Attorney General said. And I see no contradiction at all. Padier.
Thank you, Right Honorable Chair. Right Honorable Chair, with my limited knowledge of the law, I think what you're trying to state is that the principle is clear, that this contract has been injured. Whether it is void ab initio, whether it is null and void, whether major terms of the contract have been breached, major terms that go to the root of the agreement. The point here is that now it is at the instance of government, okay, to act. Because even then we say the contract, I think, the terms were not well negotiated, and therefore there is no contract. Still, the concessionaire is not at any leverage, is not at peace. Now, if we go to the the terms of the contract being breached, and then we will still talk one term, that if the major terms of the contract have been breached, then the government is at its own option to actually get out of the contract. My only concern here is, Right Honorable Speaker, my only concern is, we have had people coming here signing contracts, then we give them licenses. Then they go ahead to sell the licenses to other companies. Losses where government could have incurred losses. What is the position of government, the Minister of Finance, and also the position of the Attorney General on claiming those losses, so that we don't use this kind of contracts later to actually take advantage of government, where people may act as people negotiating the contract. The other side, they're also the receivers or the beneficiary of the same breach. That is where my only fear is. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
Please, let's close this. Let's close this.
Right Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, I want to first take the opportunity to thank my colleague members of parliament for your contributions. I want to be sincere to this house and to Ugandans who are watching me. If it were up to me, I would have terminated this concession long ago. But I was relying on the guidance and advice of the Attorney General. Given that I am a journalist by profession, not a lawyer, I acted by giving a notice of termination after getting guidance from the Attorney General. But now that the Attorney General has given me a new position, Right Honorable Speaker, I want to request that the Attorney General puts this in writing so that I can take the next appropriate step. And as for the concern raised by some of the honorable colleagues,
I think, Honorable Minister, I think the matter is closed.
yes.
Don't reopen it. Don't reopen it.
I just wanted to give them a confirmation. Okay. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, honorable members. We lay the documents.
Right Honorable Speaker, I was asked to lay on table the concession agreement between the government of the Republic of Uganda, Kilembe Mines Limited, Tibet Hima Mining Coal Limited, and Tibet Hima Automobile Industry Coal Limited, dated 6th September 2013. I beg to lay.
Let the record capture the agreement.
Right Honorable Speaker, I also beg to lay termination notice for the Kilembe Mines concession to Mr. Lee Weigo, the Chief Executive Officer, stroke Chairman of Tibet Hima Mining Company Limited, care of Logmark Advocates, 5th floor, West Wing, Social Security House, 4th Ginger Road, dated 20th June 2017, signed by myself. Right Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Let the records capture that. Thank you. Can we get a brief on the development of these matters as soon as we are ready with the actions taken on this matter in the course of the next 2 weeks? And you also brief us on the remedies you are taking to make good some losses, if there were any, that could have been incurred in the process of this agreement. Thank you.
The water underground.
Well, those are now incidental matters, administrative issues to be taken, really. Please. Thank you. Next item.
Item number 7 on the order paper, consideration and adoption of the report of the Committee on Rules, Privileges and Discipline on amendment to the Parliamentary Rules of Procedure.
Thank you. Honorable members, I've been briefed that this report on the principle was presented and debated. Was it debated, honorable members? No, I'm also aware that part of this report, part of the recommendations of the from the Committee of Rules, Privileges and Discipline was adopted in the course of effecting the elections for the members of the East African Legislative Assembly. That is the extent to which the amendments were approved and implemented. But the rest of what was proposed by the committee had not yet been adopted. Now the committee presented a report, and the report has attachments. The attachments are the proposed recommendations, proposed amendments to our rules of procedure. So we'll proceed as we proceed with the bills. We'll finish with the general debate on these principles. We'll adopt the principles, and then we'll go to committee of the whole House to examine the specific amendments in their specific terms, and then the way we handle bills, that we go to the specific amendments and deal with them. So I'm advised that the debates were not concluded on the principles as on the report that has been presented by the committee. If it is true that it was not, I could now, at this time, invite members to make contribution. There being no contributions, but if there's debate on the general principle of what has been on the report, without the specifics of the amendment, because we could go to the rules direct by now going to committee stage and we handle the rules the way they have been proposed. Is it more practical? Kyoga, can we go down to the rules? Principles from Kyoga and Masindi and PW on the principles? We're not dealing with amendments?
Yeah, thank you very much.
2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on principles, my concern is on page 7. The first paragraph, second line, the proposal by the independent members of Parliament to be nominated for election to the Commission. Mr. Speaker, these are independent members of Parliament, and they are individuals without affiliations. Mr. Speaker, independent members of Parliament are not influenced or controlled, either in terms of opinion, conduct, thinking, or action, not even by fellow independent members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Now, he or she is an independent thinker, the way I take it, and not subject to any authority, not subject to any jurisdiction.
Procedure.
Mr. Speaker.
Procedure. Procedure.
Right, Honorable Speaker. This is very heavy duty for me to seek procedural guidance on a matter that my colleague is stating. Is he proceeding well by castigating, judging, concluding, without any reference to specific legislation made from this House or without this House? I would like to benefit from this issue of independence, that we are independent from action, thinking, and all this. Where is he? A member of parliament is not supposed to debate like a street preacher who would say the Bible says. Can he quote for us the rules he's referring to? Which states that we are independent of thinking, association, even in view of a recent constitutional court ruling that recognizes the right to associate. Yes. Is he proceeding well? And do I have to remind him that anybody in this House can be independent?
Honorable members, it's a recognition of the Constitution that a citizen of this country who qualifies to be elected can stand either as a member of a political party or independent of any political party. It is recognized. And once we come to this House, we are members of Parliament of Uganda. But we need to recognize the peculiarities of this House. That you have members from the government side and members from the opposition side and independent members of Parliament. They are also there. And then you also have the UPDF. These recognitions must be made in the way we do our deliberations. So there is no way you can dismiss the independent bench as if it were empty, because it has very competent members of Parliament seated there and articulating matters of national interest, just like any one of us is doing. So please, let's respect each other and proceed in that spirit. Courtesy is important. On this matter? On this particular matter? Or we are debating? After I've guided? Procedure?
Mr. Speaker, I want to request the honorable members of parliament. This particular subject matter concerns our rules. And when we go down to the committee of the whole house to amend rule by rule, we will be debating. If we debate now and then go to the amendment, the committee of the whole house start debating, we'll be wasting our own time. Why don't we allow to go to the committee of the whole house and start considering rule by rule, and whoever has an issue, we debate at that stage.
Is that okay, honorable member? Was that guidance? Please, honorable member, can we go and deal with the rules, rule by rule, as proposed by the member from Dorua? Is there any matter that is on principle that is so significant that we must debate at this stage, Masindi?
Mr. Speaker, you had picked few people to bring out certain issues which they feel that are pertinent to the rules of procedure. And I thought that we should be given time to bring out these issues, so that even when we reach at the committee stage, those issues which will have come out of these deliberations should be picked by members, and we should not delay actually at the committee stage. So I still
proceed. I've already
urge you that pray that you give us time to make our presentation, then we go to committee stage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
I want to comment on first on withdrawal signatures from reports or petitions. The chairperson has recommended that in our rules of procedure, we need to do away with this one. But I know that at times members append the signatures, and then when they go back to go through the entire report, they find at times when there are certain things which have changed, and that makes it difficult for a member to own up his signature. So I want to propose that in the same rules of procedure, we put there a mechanism of how if a member at one time wanted to withdraw his signature or her signature, then should be allowed to withdraw the signature. Mr. Speaker, I know that there is a lot of work to be handled by parliaments, and if at all we are to handle this work, the magnitude of work, that means we need parliament to continuously sit. But also I know that at times the office of the speaker is busy. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to an issue. Other parliaments have gone ahead to put in place the speaker's panel, and I feel this will help us to be able to handle such a workload which we have not been handling. So I want to propose that when we reach at the committee stage, that this parliament puts in place a panel of speakers, so that in the absence of the speaker and the deputy speaker, the parliament's business should not be stalled. I know it has ever stalled this parliament's business because the two are committed with the national issues. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to bring this one on the floor of the House so that members at an appropriate time when I raise it, we can digest it and be able to incorporate it in our rules of procedure.
Proceed, please close.
Mr. Speaker, I want to bring out an issue of our population. Mr. Speaker, our population, 51% are women and 49% are men. And Uganda was #1 when we introduced the affirmative action in terms of percentage of representation in political offices. Mr. Speaker, I want to propose at an appropriate time that when it comes to constitution of committees, I know yesterday this business was pushed ahead, was stayed. At an appropriate time, that all the committees should reflect the percentage, the gender disparity, the gender representation at all levels, especially when it comes to committee leadership. If a chair is a man, then the vice should be a woman. And if vice versa, if the chair is a woman, then the vice should be a man. And this one will reflect our population outside there. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, on voting, at times when we sit here up to 6, 7, Mr. Speaker, and we handle contentious issues and we take a vote, at times we have people like today, we have breastfeeding mothers who need to go home and breastfeed. We have people who need to go back home and get their treatment. We have diabetic people. And Mr. Speaker, you are aware that when you are approaching 45, you need to have your meals, the dinner or supper, before 8 so that you don't develop indigestion. So I want to pray that when it comes to committee stage, that in our rules of procedure, we include in that clause where when it comes to voting, if an issue of contention or if we intend to take a vote, let it be handled before 5 so that we accommodate everyone. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and thank the members, and I pray that some of these issues are to help us to be able to handle our business and to look as serious people, because other parliaments, they are doing it. When you hear Speaker reading the number of bills, motions which have been passed at the State of the Nation address, really we as if we are not doing anything. And we sit here for 3 months, for a whole year, but you are hearing only 25 motions, 25 petitions, 5 bills. What are we doing here? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. PWD Eastern.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker.
I will not go to the details of the report, then I'll make my comments later. Right Honorable Speaker, I was looking at the situation of the sectoral committees and standing committees. If we could provide days, because when Parliament is sitting, most of the business is on sessional committees, and you realize that the other ones are put down. They are said, you are not going to handle your business until the other ones are finished. And yet there are critical issues that affect the population that are not put on the rules. So I think we need to give a time, maybe a Tuesday or a Thursday, for these other committees to meet, because there's a lot of collusion. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the committee on the debates of the reports which are put on the table by committees and leaders of delegations. But I want to add that where the ministers are expected to respond, they should also be given a time frame in the rules, because sometimes we make recommendations and they remain like a storybook and nobody gives a response. Mr. Speaker, I know the power of giving timing to members of Parliament to talk rests in the hands of the presiding officer. But sometimes there's a critical issue. 2 minutes, when you read our Hansard, is really terrible. Your sentence remains hanging. Maybe there should be a way the chief whips can help us to delegate if there's a critical issue, that some people could be able to provide guidance and take lead of a certain topic, so that we give debate the meaning and the importance of it. Otherwise, it becomes hard to read handsets and things are incomplete. And then finally, I think the sitting arrangement has been mentioned, that both this side and the other. Yesterday we were discussing, the front bench is not in our rules, that the ministers will be sitting in front. So we need to put in the rules, because one day I might have no seat and I come and sit there and somebody will rule me out of order. So we need to put it into the rules. And when we talk about the election of commissioners, Mr. Speaker, with the recognition of the independence, I think we need to put people with special interest into the commission. Yes, because there are issues of special interest that the commissioners might not be aware. If at a certain point, maybe they need to be invited to be given guidance. I want to thank you for now. I'll come back when we are looking at the amendment. Thank you.
Majuri.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have read through the report of the committee. Let me raise 2 or 3 observations. One is on the use of English as the official language for the proceedings and debates of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I have looked at Article 6.2 of our national constitution. That introduces Kiswahili as the second official language. So I would propose that the rules of procedure of Parliament should also conform to the national law, that is the Constitution, such that we incorporate Kiswahili as our second official language as a Parliament, because that is a constitutional provision under Article 6.2. You may say no way, but this is the rules of procedure of Parliament, and the Constitution is clear. The official language is English. The second official language constitutionally is Kiswahili. Issue number two, Mr. Speaker, we have created, with the support of this Parliament, a ministry in charge of science, technology, and innovation. And yet our standing committee is a standing committee on science and technology only. I would move an amendment during the Committee of the All House to ensure that the title of this committee is amended and it is changed, or we add science, technology, and innovation. And this one now being a sector on its own, I don't know whether it is in the wisdom of this Parliament that this committee be turned into a sectoral committee to handle the ministry that has been created in charge of science, technology, and innovation. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is on the 45 days for processing a bill. The rule seems to be a bit silent on whether the 45 days is inclusive of public holidays, is inclusive of weekends. For clarity, I would propose that we amend it to specifically provide for 45 working days. That means you have 5 days in a week, 5 days the following week, for clarity. My last point has been raised by the honorable representing person with disability, but I was looking at rule 9. Mr. Speaker, it is only the civility in me that has always been reigning. I wanted to attempt one day just to sit on the front bench, and I see who would raise a point of order to evict me from the front bench. Because when we look at our rules of procedure under 9, there is no reservation for the front bench for ministers on the right-hand side of the speaker and on the left-hand side of the speaker for shadow ministers. So I think we need to make that specific provision, because in our rules, what is stated there under Rule 9.2, only that the seat to the right hand of the speaker shall be reserved for the leader of government business and members of the party in government. I'm a member of the party in government. As long as the leader of opposition is seated there, under our rules, I can also occupy. So can we be specific to provide that particular provision and reserve these seats for ministers and shadow ministers?
What happens like new numbers?
Please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dennis Aboa. There are incidences where ministers come and the front bench is full. They opt to sit at the back. Would you like to make a provision for that also, for clarity? Because sometimes we sit anywhere when the front bench is full.
I strongly believe that one, we are sworn in as members of parliament, and that particular minister, if he or she is a member of parliament, he or she is free to sit in any. But I'm specifically meaning this particular assignment that is given to you from the commander-in-chief, the fountain of honor, the head of the executive, and makes you a minister, and you again take an additional oath. We would like you to occupy where you're supposed to sit, because under the rules, I can come and sit next to you, Madam Government Chief Whip, and you cannot throw me. But I want you to be there, and all the ministers, you have your place reserved. And I know as a backbencher, that is a no-go zone for me.
Clarification, Honorable.
Thank you.
Clarification. Yeah, because
Oh, it's done, eh? Okay. So we're going to have a debate now. Okay, I have Budadiri West, Padiere, Erute, Oyam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, me I'm on rule number 5, elections of the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you're a new member of Parliament, when you're a new member of Parliament, you vote without knowing. Why do I say you vote without knowing? A speaker must come and make his presentation or her presentation that is qualified to be a speaker. There has never been an election in this world where people don't campaign. I'll move an amendment that the speaker and the deputy speaker must campaign so that now you can see people who are just saying no, no, no. The speaker must campaign so that we vote somebody who will know, instead of just going by the flow, that now you vote X and Y. We are losing good speakers because they are not being given opportunities to put their case. Mr. Speaker, the other rule rule number 184. The rule talks about removal of a chair and a vice chair, which the committee has talked about. I am now going to draw my experience when I came here long ago. What used to happen, members of parliament would choose where they want to go in a committee. Don't worry, even here we shall help you. And when you go there, the members themselves choose the chair and the vice. I have been to some committees. Why some members are running away, they say, but this chair, this vice, we want this thing to be amended. Because you have said it is parliament. And these committees are for parliament. If they are for parliament, let the members choose their chairs and their vices. That applies even to the parliamentary commissioners. You bring us commissioners, why don't you allow us to choose our own commissioners? So that we should amend the rules to deal with that. So that's the one answer. So you cannot give committee members to remove the chair and the vice and whom they never put there in the first place. So they must first put them there, then they can be able to what? To deal with them. I know the chief whips want power over regency. We shall give your regency somehow, somewhere. But for now, this power must be within us members of parliament. And I'm raising it in good faith. I know Honorable Ruth Nakabira doesn't want to lose power. This time we are going.
Point of order.
Right Honorable Speaker, it is on record that I participated in a very important exercise of promulgating the Constitution of Uganda, which established democratic methods of change of power. And I swear by that Constitution. Is the Honorable Nandala Mafabi, who has been here for long, who is expected to have remembered all this, in order to impute improper motives in the government chief whip that does not want to leave power, I want to stick to power with or without authorization. Is he in order to put words or to speculate, Right Honorable Speaker?
Yet you don't want power.
First of all, the reference was to one Honorable Nankabira, not to the government chief whip. No, I was listening. Two, I would like you to go there and tell us that you really want to lose power. Then I can rule.
Right Honorable Speaker,
Do
sir.
you want to lose power?
Today, on the Wednesday, 6th, is it 6th or 5th? 5th July, I want to declare that I will always abide by the decision of the voters who put me in power. The moment they say they don't want me, I will not stick to that.
The statement was that the Honorable Nankabira does not want to lose power.
Yes.
Do you, that's the point on which you raise a point of order. Do you actually want to lose power? So that I can rule. Because if you don't want to lose power, then I cannot rule the member out of order.
I need protection from both the presiding officer and the House. The fact is that, Honorable Nandala Mafabi, if you can read the spirit, both the spirit and the words, you can be able to detect, Right Honorable Presiding Officer, where Nandala Mafabi was going. He was imputing improper motives that I am actually sticking to power whether the people have said you go. And this is the spirit which he was bringing.
No, the statement might have invoked the right sentiment in you, but that's not what was said. What was said was that I know the Honorable Nankabira does not want to lose power. That's what was said. And I wanted you to come and say, no, actually for me, I want to lose power. In which case, I would have ruled the member out of order. But now,
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for your words ruling. Thank you very much. And I always like Honorable Nakabira because she makes the house happy. And the other point, which was the people sitting on the front benches. The people who designed this house knew that the front benches, even in the UK, where I've seen, is for ministers. And it is basically to be filled. And it should not overflow. Should not overflow. In short, the president should also be advised that this bench should not overflow. The reason we're having some of them coming here, is that everywhere is because of those problems. Overflowing, even getting a UPC who has a seat to come and sit here. So that is the reason. So that's one I'm going to make it. But the other point, since we have talked about removal of chairs, we shall deal with it at an appropriate time, Mr. Speaker, because
procedure.
Right Honourable Speaker, I am always hesitant to interrupt the Honourable Nadara Mafabi, but listening to the general debate, I'm afraid we risk doing a double job. I've listened to everybody who is debating. They are saying, when we reach to the committee stage, I will move to amend this rule. Everybody is citing a rule and giving a reason why the rule should be amended or should stand. Isn't it proper that instead of taking more time with the general debate, we go to the committee stage so that these matters. So I beg to move that a question be put on the general debate and we move to committee stage.
Honourable members, the motion is that the question be put. And I'm required to put the question to that motion without, even in my opinion, it's proper to do so. I'll put the question to the question that the question be put. I'll now put the question to the motion that the question be put. I put the question, will those in favor say aye, to the contrary no? The ayes have it. I now put the question to the adoption of the report of the Committee on Rules, Privileges and Discipline. I put the question that the report of the Committee of Rules, Privileges and Discipline on the amendment of the rules of procedure be adopted. Will those in favor say aye, to the contrary no? The ayes have it.
Committee of the Whole House.
Honourable members, as we go to Committee of the Whole House, let me just say these things. Then we go to committee. Not everything has to be in the rules. We use the Commonwealth procedures. So there is both rules and procedures that have been adopted over the years since the first parliament was established in the Commonwealth. Two, on the issue of structured debate that members have been talking about. That you can have a debate where the sides allocate time and they choose who to speak to occupy that time. That has been something that has been debated here for some time. If it's going to be adopted, that would be a way forward. For example, if you have general debate on the State of the Nation address. If the government side we can say government side will take 3 hours. The opposition will take maybe 2 hours. And the independent side will take maybe 1 hour, and whatever category of people can take. Then you can say they go and sit and decide who will present the arguments. That's what they call a structured debate. So that when the speaker comes, it's just advised with a list of people who are going to speak and for how long. So that I will call the Honorable Ruth Nankabira 15 minutes. And she knows that that is how it will go until the debate is finished for this particular thing. That has been proposed, has been debated. That does not affect other debates. That where catch the eye, what they call catch the eye debate, where a member rises and he catches the eye of the speaker and then speaks. The structured debates are also a category of debate that can also be considered. Now, on the election of the speaker, the procedure is that speakers don't campaign to the house they are going to preside over. That has been the practice. So in no parliament in the Commonwealth will you find that an assembly sits to elect a speaker and their campaigns. It's nowhere. We'll be setting a precedent. If you want to set that precedent, it's entirely up to you. And 4, the structure of this house is also based on the Commonwealth system. You have, for example, the bar. It has a purpose where the honorable members are now, because of the size of the house, are allowed to sit. It's called the bar. Where those polls are drawn, it becomes, you are not part of the house, the proceedings. You are not part of the house, you are outside the house. You become a stranger, but inside the chamber. You have what we call the dispatch table, and that is this table in the middle. You have what is called the dispatch box, which are those 2. In the past, that is where the instrument would be. So that when the Prime Minister rises to make the presentation, or the leader of the opposition rises to make the presentation, they will open that and pick the documents from there. That's what it is for. And then the bench immediately facing the dispatch box is what you call the Treasury bench. And that's where the Prime Minister is supposed to sit, where the Prime Minister is leader of government business. He's supposed to sit and face the Treasury bench. The Treasury bench there. Now what you have here behind me is what they call the technical bench. So this house is structured in that way, that you have a front bench, which is part of also the Treasury bench, and also have the bench where the front leaders of the opposition shadow ministers sit. So for as long as we are still using the Commonwealth system, it might be something you want to look at, whether you want to continue with it or not. But would it apply? For example, if we get new chambers that are structured in the horseshoe way, that is just round like other parliaments, would it still apply? Those are issues for the future, which this rule should be taken care of in view of the fact that we are about to construct new chambers. I don't know what the shapes will be, but going from the artistic drawing, there might be a difference from what we have at the moment. But those are issues, we should consider them. So you cannot just say front bench, no front bench. No, because they are rules, they have been used for decades. But change is also good. If you want to change them now, it's okay. It will be over the years, honorable member for a jury, if you came and sat there, nobody will stop you, but you will be feeling out of place. And because people might be thinking you are taking the campaign for coming in front too far. So out of humility, you would fear to come and sit in front, because just in case people misread your actions of coming to sit in front. So the day you want to do that, you do it. Nobody will disturb you, but you'll feel slightly out of place by over-dramatizing your desires of becoming a member of the front bench. Honorable members, it's now 5:30. And I intend to raise the House at 6. Can we make some progress on the rules as it is? Or should we come back when we are fresh and start properly? Okay, we have adopted the report of the committee. All that is left for us now to handle are the actual amendments at the committee stage of the bill. Of our rules of procedure. Honorable members, in the circumstances, we all know that tomorrow we'll have a special sitting in respect of a fallen colleague, the Honorable Sebana Kizito, who will be coming to whose body will be coming to Parliament tomorrow. So there will be no normal ordinary sitting of Parliament tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be a special sitting that will start at 2. The body will be coming to Parliament. I'm not yet very sure about the time because there are two conflicts. Is it midday? Some say 10, the speaker said midday. So that's what I also been informed, yes.
Right Honorable Speaker, at 8 a.m.
No, it's coming
to
to
11,
Parliament. Coming to Parliament.
the body will be at KCCA. Then at midday, we shall receive the body here at Parliament. And then 2 o'clock, we shall begin the session to pay tribute.
Okay. So now it is clear tomorrow will be a special sitting for this particular purpose, which I have communicated. So the sitting of this House is adjourned. The normal sitting of the ordinary sitting of the House is adjourned to Tuesday, 2 p.m. The special sitting will be tomorrow. House adjourned.
Okay.